So it's wonderful to be here today to share in this story. I was quite amazed to be able to go on this adventure. I want to thank Ruth for inviting me. I also want to thank Walt for coming twice this week to help us with the technology. We couldn't have done it without him getting us access in here and telling Murphy to come and do his thing then and leave us alone. I titled this talk Making Left Turns, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't have anything to do with politics. So we'll get that out of the way right away. Joe and I, my husband and I, live in the Russian River area in Northern California, and we live here in Florence, and we're delighted to be in both places. And he likes to go get coffee every afternoon. So we go and find different coffee places, and I tag along for the adventure because there's always an adventure, no matter where one goes. And after the coffee, we get back in the car, and instead of just driving home, I have said more than once, let's go up here and make a left. And what I mean by that is, let's go home a different way. Let's see what we encounter on this abandoned road. Because it's been my experience that Mother Nature always has something else to provide us. And it's been delightful to be open to that experience. I recently have been on the couch with a shoulder issue for weeks, and I have read more and spun this story over the last few weeks than probably in the last 2 years of our retirement. So it's been a delight to be able to work on this. And one of my readings was a book called No Baggage by Clara Benson. And I have some of these references on one of these sheets if anybody wants one later. And this young couple met on the internet, and within several short weeks, they traveled together to Istanbul and had a flight from London 3 weeks later to come back to the States. And they traveled with no baggage, a credit card, $200, and the clothes on their back. And they lived. And their relationship has grown over the last couple of years, and they've done several other trips. But what I loved about their story was how they let serendipity take them from one place to the other, and how they relied on trusting themselves and trusting the people around them with a place to stay and a place to eat and a way to get from point A to point B, because they realized that that was the adventure, getting from point A to point B. For me, especially in the last 15 years or so, Mother Nature has pulled me to my present moment so many times and has given me so many insights that I've been overwhelmed time and time again. Rumi says, there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. And that's what these experiences have offered me. Several years ago, when we were living in Spokane, the local Spokesman Review newspaper had an article about the monarch butterflies in Mexico. And I did something kind of uncharacteristic of me. I cut the article out and I put it on the wall so that every time I went down the stairs, and I went down those stairs often, there was that article. And it spoke to me, and it spoke to me, and it spoke to me. And not soon after we retired, I knew we had to go to Mexico to see these monarch butterflies. So Joe decided that he didn't want to go, but I knew I could count on my paddling girlfriend, Terry, to go on this adventure. And she'd been to Mexico several times. So I knew that we could do it. So I ask you, the first of a series of questions, what destination do you have in mind for yourself? What place is it you want to go and haven't been there yet? So just hold that thought. So last March, we had our lineup of our plans. We did take some baggage. And we did have our nights planned. I wanted to know where I was going to put my head down. But we made left turns constantly. We didn't go to the Rivieras, the coasts right away. The idea of sitting on the beach is inviting, but that wasn't what I wanted to have as an experience. So we made lefts constantly into the center of Mexico. We landed in Mexico City, and that was like our beginning, and then we had plans. But before I tell you where we showed up, I need to tell you about the Monarchs themselves. Most of us who have been on a spiritual path understand that inner transformation, and what the butterfly cycle is all about shows us that transformation. You might not remember when you were a child or your children were in school how everybody goes through that process of studying that transformation. But just to remind you, the butterfly lays the egg, which turns into a larvae, which turns into a caterpillar, which is black and yellow, interestingly enough. And then, after several days, that caterpillar turns into a cocoon. And after several more days, that cocoon splits open and this butterfly comes forth. With the monarchs, that's a process of about 30 to 40 days. And these butterflies live in the milkweed fields in Texas. So if you can imagine them flying, gliding on the airstreams in Texas. And after about 40 days, the butterflies mate, and the male and the female die. But she first lays her eggs in the milkweed, and then the larvae turns into a caterpillar and eats that milkweed, and then turns into a cocoon, and then turns into a butterfly. This happens throughout the Midwest and all the way up to Canada 3 and 4 times. And that cycle is quite interesting. I found myself relating to that cycle and seeing how in my own lifetime I've had several of those reoccurrences. I'm not so sure about reincarnation. I got my plate full with this one particular life. But when I look back at my own path, I've had about 3 or 4 lifetimes in this one, in my 64 years. Living in one particular place, having one particular set of friends, one particular job, these family members surrounding me. And just about the time I've done the work as a caterpillar and done my duties, suddenly I'm in a cocoon, and suddenly I'm coming out with my wings spread, and it's time for me to move again. And the cycle starts once again. Have you ever had that experience of looking back at your own life and seeing those phases, and how every time we come back out of that cocoon, we're lifted once more and we're energized once more to go to the next place? It takes courage to push yourself to places you have never been before, to test your limits, to break through barriers. And the day came when the risk it took to stay tight inside the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And that's a quote by Anise Nin. Her parents were Cuban, and she grew up in France and ultimately lived in the United States in the middle of the last century and had a lot of writings and essays. And her words are very true. Now, these butterflies, the monarch butterflies, have one more step that wasn't really known until the 60s and the 1970s. They are out there flying around in the Midwest all the way up to Canada. And sometime around August and September, something calls to them. And we're not exactly sure what it is. The scientists think that it might be the way the sun hits the horizon at that particular time of year. No matter where these males and females are, they know that it's time for them to head southwest. And they travel 2,500 miles. This one generation of monarchs. At times, they can be up to a mile high over the fields of the Midwest. That's 5,280 feet high. They can be by themselves, or they can be with others. And they keep going and keep going. They don't know that they're crossing state lines, much less the Rio Grande. And it took until 1976 to confirm where they were going. And it takes them from September, October, and November. Now the Mexican people, where they head, knew they were coming. Matter of fact, their arrival coincides with November 2nd, which is the Day of the Dead, El Dia de los Muertos. And the Mexican people, who are so poetic, say that their arrival is actually the souls of the children who have come back. And they're celebrating their loved ones in the cemeteries as these butterflies fly over. And once they arrive in Mexico, up in the hills of Michoacán, they cluster on fir trees and eucalyptus trees and huddle together in humongous clusters, much like we've seen the bison do, the penguins do. It's amazing. And it can get so heavy on that branch that one more butterfly that lands sends the whole branch down. And that's a butterfly attack. And that's how huge these clusters are. And they spend November, December, and January in hibernation and holding on to their energy. Starting in February, as the sun comes up and warms the air, they start moving around during the day and then come back to their clusters high up in these hills. And that's about where Terry and I showed up in Mexico. You can see Mexico City is over here to the southeast, and we landed in Mexico City. All of these butterflies are preserves where they live. And we went first to the little town of Zitácuaro and stayed there. And then the next day, we got on horseback. A gentleman in a cab drove us an hour and a half to this reserve. And when we arrived, nobody was there but us and a couple guides. And we were told that we needed to get on these horses for an hour and a half. And we were going to go up into the hills. And I looked at the cab driver who we had arranged for him to wait for us, and I said, "You wait here. If we're not back in 4 hours, call somebody." But it took trust, and we were on an adventure, and my dear friend Terry, she's smiling up there, but she had other thoughts too. Her favorite line when she is up to the edge is, "Oh my God." And we have heard that often. So here we are going. And you can't quite tell, there's the tip of the horses. You can't quite tell what the level of altitude is, but I'm here to tell you it was like that. And this is how we felt when we got up to the top. I felt like we had climbed Mount Everest. We had been told that the last 20 minutes we were going to have to get off the horse and climb because it was too steep for the horses. And we got up to this ridge, and the only person that was there was like a guide. And he welcomed us, and he took a picture. And we were joyous because we were at this ridge, and these butterflies were down in the canyons, and it was very full of vegetation, trees and such. And it was a delight to finally see. That sign that you can't read is present in quite a few of these preserves, and it says, "Please maintain silence." You can see some through there. There's a little bit of a cluster on that far right. The next day, we decided to go to a different preserve. We were lucky enough to have time to not pack it all in. And the Rosario Reserve is more suited to accept visitors. And again, I have their websites on this sheet. Rosario really is there for the tourists. It's been set up over the last several years. So that was wonderful. But we had to get back on horses again. This time it was only about a 20-minute ride. But by this time, we're old hats at this. So we were very open to that. We came out to this field, and it's like that. All of those on the ground are monarch butterflies. This is a video piece, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it work. But that's okay. You can see it on my phone if you really want to. They were just everywhere. And the sun, you can see how the sun is just brilliant. And suddenly, they have little kind of puddles of water so that the butterflies can get some moisture. Suddenly we were surrounded by teenagers. And I'm not sure which was more contagious, the butterflies or the teenagers. And they heard that I was speaking Spanish to the guide, and that made us pop stars suddenly. Because I have to tell you that these were all Mexican people there. There were a couple Europeans. I think we saw one couple that were Americans. And everybody else was Mexican, which was fabulous. And this young man towards the back there, he arrested my phone. And they all took selfies. It was fascinating. And I realized I had an opportunity, and I got on my soapbox. And I told them that I was thrilled to see them here celebrating their own treasure in their own country. Because they were the young people, and it was their responsibility to maintain this treasure, to maintain this place for not only themselves, but for others that would come thereafter. And their teacher was way in the back, and she was giving me a high sign. This was our guide. He had worked there for 12 years. He loved the butterflies. And because I could speak, we got such wonderful attention and heard all kinds of inside stories that we wouldn't have heard otherwise. You can see them up there in the sky, just all over. And then he took us to, now they're landing on those trees. And then he took us to this field. And we saw, and they also had signs telling us to be quiet. And you know how those snow globes that we see today, at this time of year, where you want to get inside one? This is what it felt like. Being completely surrounded by these orange beauties. I know that the way we are spoken to within is by being in the present moment. When we let everything go about what happened before and what happened in the future. But that's when Mother Nature can tell us about our true being. That the more we're in the present moment, the richer it is. And I have to tell you that being in this forest, surrounded by this beauty, I have the most strings of the present moment that I can recall in quite a long time. It is having experienced one of the wonders of the world. And of course, you know, my girlfriend has to show what she wants. And can you tell what she wants? This is supposed to be the video, but it doesn't. For some reason, it doesn't link up. But she's walking and she's waiting for them to land on her.
Oh, wow.
And of course they did.
There it goes. The video's going.
Completely all around us.
Yeah, it's going.
It's going?
Oh, it was.
Well, it goes in slow motion too. I hesitate going back because I'm afraid I'm not going to get it back. We were in this one place, this one area where they told us to be gentle. And suddenly, one landed right on my hand, right there. And then, they landed on the 5-year-old. And she was so delighted. I think by the time we were done, she had 6 of them on her, like that. Now, this is the map that shows you where we've been. Let's step over there. You see where the dots are? That's where we have been. Now, what happens after this celebration in the sun? We're talking the end of February, beginning of March. We were there in early March. Now they're up and they're alive and they're relishing in the sun. And that's their mating time. The males and the females get together. And then, sorry to tell you guys, you stay there. You drop down to the ground. And the females start to head back up to the milkweed fields of Texas. That you see those arrows. And the cycle starts all over again. So that particular generation left Canada, or somewhere, back in August, traveled 2,500 miles, came and hibernated in the Mexican hills, mated, and turned around and started back up. The females did all of that. So that made me think for myself these last several weeks on my couch. Okay, I got their little cycles, you know. I got that in my own So what does that long stretch signify, represent in my life? And I'm thinking that it's actually the best and the most important adventure for all of us. It's that time where we don't have the work responsibilities or the parenting responsibilities or all of those things that pull on us, where we can spend time turning in and subjecting ourselves to Mother Nature to turn within and see what she has to tell us. So I'm still unwrapping these gifts, and I'm very thankful to be able to do that. Now, we still go to coffee every afternoon, and I want to make sure that we get every adventure possible. So if you have a favorite bakery or a favorite coffee place, would you please tell Joe? So that we can get there, and then we can, on the way home, make some more less. Thank you very much.